Hi, Melanie. It's so good to see you.
Good morning or afternoon.
Would you mind introducing yourself and then we'll get to your story?
I am Melanie Williams, and I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I have lived here since 1976.
Yeah, would you share about your experience with the church?
Sure. I was born and raised in meetings, and on my dad's side, I am fourth generation, and on my mom's side, I'm third generation. Both of them also were born and raised in it, and so we kind of go back a little bit. On my dad's
Hmm.
side, my grandpa actually was in the work for a short amount of time, and then he left after having a nervous breakdown. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the background of both of those. And other than
Hmm.
that, I was born in the springtime of 1962. I was born in Drayton, North Dakota, 35 miles from the Canadian border. So,
Hmm.
well, very north.
Yeah.
My dad
Hmm.
was, he was a potato farmer. His family did potatoes. And so that's where it all started. And
Hmm.
I will say that one of my favorite things to think about and ponder on is something that Alex Chu, he is an ex 2 by 2 that lives overseas, said once, and it was really struck a chord with me. And he said, "Where did we end and the system begin?" So that's kind of where my story starts because I feel like it started at birth, being exposed to the meetings as far as the cadence of the speaking and the hymns. So I feel
Hmm.
like for myself and probably a lot of people, we ended and the system began when we were very, very small. So when you leave, it's kind of like finding yourself and finding
Yeah,
out who you are. So
right. Exactly. Would you share a bit about your journey in the church and yourself and the system and how they intermingled?
yes. So the first thing I thought when I was thinking about this the other night was maybe you needed to put a trigger warning. And then it just came to me that when I was born, there was no trigger warning. And for everything that happened to me, there was no trigger warning. It literally was just what happened. So trigger warnings to me are a little interesting because it's like, well, I didn't have one either.
Right.
So my story starts, I didn't really feel like I understood that there was a difference between me and everybody else until I was probably about 10, maybe 9 or 10. Prior to that, I was just a little girl growing up with my parents and going to meeting. My grandparents in North Dakota had meeting in their home. I do remember as a little girl feeling like there was a lot of crying. My grandma was very tearful, and her testimony was always um, she cried a lot. And it just made me feel really sad. So I remember feeling as a little girl that I needed to protect people and love them because it felt like they were so sad. So that kind of started my journey of being a caretaker of people, I think. When I was probably about 6 or 7, my parents divorced. So mom came back to Colorado to live in a little trailer um, in Fountain, Colorado. We lived right next to my grandparents, and we spent a year there with them. I was very close to my mom. She had a very hurt heart, and so it was part of my personality to be a very close and caregiving to her. That continued until she passed away 2 months ago, and she was 91. So I loved my mom. I loved my dad too. So anyway, he came back after a year. He went to California and kind of did his thing, and he came back to Colorado and said, "Let's move to Texas." So that is where I learned the difference between the truth and everyone else. And when I say the truth, I mean meetings. It's a habit for me to call it the truth.
Hmm.
Um, we went down there and we lived in a very small town, Olney, Texas. There was 4,000 people in it and no professing people. So my friends were who I went to school with. And I learned that I was different. I had to wear dresses and everyone else wore pants. And so I was trying to figure out in my little brain how this all equates and all works out. What made them so different? My dad, after a couple of years of us moving down there, did stop going to meeting again. It was kind of turbulent. And at that time, I don't remember the brother worker, but I believe it was Hubert Childress, told me, I was about 10, that because my dad wasn't going to meeting anymore, he was going to go to hell and that I needed to pray for him.
Oh,
I
man.
distinctly remember being a little girl. We lived out in the country on the airport. My dad managed the airport. He was a crop duster. And there was a beacon outside of our window, and the light would go round and round. And I remember laying there watching the light on my walls and actually being very terrified that hell was so close. And so I told myself that can't be true. So from the time I was 10, I had these two things that were always warred within me, that if you weren't meeting, you were going to go to hell. But if you went to meeting, you were going to be different than everyone else. And so that was when I first started realizing that meeting made me different. We lived in, of course, the small town. And so my mom had to travel 80 miles one way to go to meeting in Henrietta, Texas. So that was our journey every Sunday. And mom was very faithful in that. It caused some strife between them. And so, of course, being a child, it's like, I want to be with dad, but I want to be with mom. And so it's not easy. It wasn't easy at all. So at one point, they decided that we needed to move into town. And that is where that year, when I was 11, was the year that I experienced child sexual assault by the neighbor man. I experienced a very close classmate of mine having brain cancer, and my dad and mom going their separate ways. So it was a big, heavy year. That year, we also had the workers come and spend the summer with us. And it was Harry McKelvey and Craig Winquist. I believe he was new in the work. He was very young. So that would have been probably 74, 75, somewhere around in there. I don't even know when he went into work. And Mark Crane. So they came and they were going to have gospel meetings in Alney. And they had just built a new savings and loan in town, and it was on Main Street. And the whole front of the building was glass windows. So they had gospel meetings, and we had to sit in the front row. Well, basically, we were the only ones there. So it was mom and my brother and my sister and I. That's really hard for me because I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. Young kids from school would drive up and down Main Street and they would rev their engines and they would honk their horns. And it was done, because we were sitting in this open glass windowed building having a church service. And I don't know how to explain how hard that is on an 11-year-old, but it just starts, those wars you have inside become monumental, and you feel very guilty and you feel very embarrassed. And I wanted to be like my friends, but I wanted to be like my mom. So it creates a lot of conflict. When you hear about, lay your burden down, I felt like I picked my burden up. I never did feel like that I was able to lay the burden down. So anyway, that was also the year that I professed, because after the brother workers left, we had two sisters come, Edna Blackburn and Irene Harrison, and they had gospel meetings in Wichita Falls, Texas. And I remember very distinctly that evening that they tested the meeting, and all the other young kids around me, there were three of them, they all stood up. And I thought, oh, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do, because if I do this, then I'll be like my mom. So that was always the thing. dad who was going to be lost and mom who was going to be saved. So I did stand up, and I will say that the first Sunday we went to meeting, in my mind, I had a testimony. I knew I was supposed to have a testimony, so I did. I had one. And I never stood up and gave it. Actually, I never gave a testimony all those years because it was so full of anxiety, and I just couldn't get to my feet. So that made me feel like a very big disappointment. I felt like I was disappointing the people around me. It's very interesting, seeds that are sown of always disappointing somebody, not being worthy, and being ashamed if you are embarrassed that you're different. It's just a lot of little roots that come out from the system. And so the more roots that you get and the more that it grows, the less you become, the less you are yourself.
Yeah.
So anyway, I do know that one of my favorite hymns was Be a Little Candle. And so I felt this huge responsibility to be a candle. And so I was always writing poems to my dad, and I was always writing poems to all the kids in school, telling them how they should love each other. So I don't know. I was a really strange little kid, but I wanted everybody to love each other. And so, it was be that little candle, and it was a huge responsibility. So anyway, I often think that the sexual assault, which went on for 3 years, happened because of partly the purity culture, which I didn't know anything about, but we were taught to be very quiet, submissive, and unquestioning. And so when you're groomed, you don't question things, but your body tells the story. And this neighbor man lived 4 houses down from us, and the grooming went on for several months. I now can look back and know what that grooming was. And but when I would leave their home to come back after babysitting, I would throw up in the neighbor's yard. And every time I babysat for them, it was a Saturday night. And so I would have to get up. I would have a migraine. My migraine started at 11, and I would throw up in the neighbor's yard, and then I would go home and get ready for meeting. So it was a lot. That went on for 3 years until we moved in 1976 when mom and dad split up then, and mom moved back to Colorado.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It's very different to look back at it as an adult and think about things and what being in something that takes away your voice does to you. Because really, I felt like as a child, it took away my voice. We were not brave. I was not brave. There might have been some people who were brave as children, but I was not brave. I felt very submissive and like I didn't have a voice.
It sounds to me like you were very brave, but you were responsible for everybody's feelings around you.
You want everyone to feel okay. And I don't know exactly where that comes from, but it is definitely something that I learned in meeting, because it was just that feeling like I have to care for everyone and they all have to be okay. And I have to be that light. And it's a huge responsibility, that feeling of responsibility. And I don't know why. I haven't really explored that. I've never done therapy. That might be something that would give me some answers.
Yeah. I do think part of it too is this dying to yourself, this idea that like we have to put everybody's needs above our own.
Yes.
And we abandon ourselves.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So that kind of gives you the background of what it was for me being a little girl, which then leads into us moving back to Colorado. And we moved in 1976. My brother stayed in Texas with my dad, and my sister and myself and my mom, we moved to Colorado. When we came back, Mom didn't know where to even look in town. So the worker said, "Oh, we have a realtor here that will be glad to help you. He's one of our Sunday morning elders." And that man was actually Roy Clady, and he lived in Whitefield. And so he encouraged Mom to buy a house down in Whitefield. So this is the second part of the story. The Cladies, he was an elder, and they lived about 2 or 3 blocks from our home. And they had taken in several children through the workers from a family in Ohio. And obviously, my radar must have been up to men who were not safe.
Mm.
I did not feel safe around him, but I didn't know why. And within the next couple of years, I witnessed things that he did to one of the girls, and I was very uncomfortable with it. And one night, my mom, actually, the interesting part about this is my mom was given a Wednesday night meeting. She was divorced and she had 2 girls, and yet we lived down in the southern part, and so they gave her a Wednesday night meeting. Roy was the elder at that meeting also when they would come over. But one of the girls showed up at my mom's house and she was crying, and she asked her to help her. And Mom said, I don't know what to do. So she called the workers, and the workers at that time in our field said, take her home and stay out of it. It's none of your business. So my mom drove her home. At that time, my mom worked for the welfare department, and she went to work the next day, and she went into her boss's office and she said, I had this experience with somebody, little girl, coming to my door and needing help. What should I have done? And she said, well, who was it? And she said, it's the Cladies. And her boss reached into her file drawer and she pulled out a file and she held it up. And Mom said it was that thick. And she said, this is the Clady file. It was about 2 months later, and another one of the girls came to the house and asked Mom for help. And Mom told her, you need to go to school and tell your counselor. She said, you have to tell someone who will help you. So she did. There was a police report filed. So that was my first experience with knowing something was desperately wrong in this church, desperately. There were things happening right in front of our eyes, and there were children crying for help, and the workers covered it up. It was also during this time that there was another elder here in town, Bill Griggs, who was highly revered, had a lot of ski parties for young teenagers. Mom was considering sending us on one, and somebody came to her and said, don't send your girls. He can't be trusted. So he was another elder in town. And so this was all going on when I was a junior and senior in high school. And it was just very unsettling because it just felt like what we should have trusted was not trustworthy and things were being covered up. And yet they were known. Known. They knew these things were happening. So that, anyway, I really struggled as a teenager because I had to go to meeting. So I lived the Sunday life, but during the week, I wanted very much to be like my friends. So I lived my friend's life during the week. And this is where I got in trouble. And I fell in love with rock and roll and boys. And when I was a junior in high school, I fell in love with one of my classmates and we started dating, and the workers came to me, and one of them was George Gittins, and he was very disappointed in me. But, I was like, well, I'm still going to meeting. And anyway, that ended up that my senior year in high school, I got pregnant. And that was the experience that changed my life forever. I had to tell my mom, and she went to the workers, and the workers said, well, she can't keep it, but we know someone who can help you through this. And they put her in contact with Dr. Baldwin, who was a baby doctor up in Oregon. And I think everybody's probably heard about Dr. Baldwin by now. And I did not want to go there, and my mom didn't have the money to send me to his place. So she arranged for me to go to my dad's place, who, of course, wasn't going to meeting, and he was living in Oklahoma at that time, Chakotah, Oklahoma. So it was made very clear to me that there were two things that I couldn't do. I couldn't keep the baby, and I couldn't come back home and go to meeting in my community unless I did what they wanted me to. Those were made very, very clear to me. So you're 18, and all you've ever known is your community of meeting and my mom, who was my everything. And I didn't know how to not come back home. So it was arranged for me to drive myself to Chakotah, Oklahoma in June. And yeah, we did not have cell phones or GPS, but I had a map, and I took a little red marker and drew my way all the way down through Amarillo. And my mom, she went and got dry ice for me because I didn't have an air conditioner. And we had a big block of dry ice to keep me cool all the way down there. And I went to my dad's. And I will have to say that in my 62 years of living, those 6 months at my dad's were some of the best months of my entire life. I had absolutely no judgment. I saw no professing people, and I did not go to a meeting. I just was there, and it was so incredibly peaceful and free. Anyway, I will say that my boyfriend was asked to come and have a meeting with my mom and one of the workers, and he was told that if he would come to meeting and profess and marry me, that I wouldn't have to go. And of course he was like, oh no, no thank you, I'm not going to join the church. So that's how that ended and why that ended with him. So I went to Oklahoma and I found a doctor and grew a baby. And I was never in contact with Dr. Baldwin at all. He found an attorney for me in town, and I was in contact with the attorney. And when it came time to have her, I waited all day because I knew as soon as she was born that things were going to change. And I did not want to give my baby away. I did not want to give her up. I just wanted to keep her and go home and be okay. So that evening at 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up my dad and told him I think I need to go to the hospital. And it was pandemonium because we were a long ways away from Muskogee, Oklahoma, and we had to drive there. And I was in a Catholic hospital. And I'm just telling this story so people can understand the depth of what a person can experience because of fear. Um, and that fear that those seeds are sown when we're just little. That if we're not meeting, we're going to go to hell. And, you know, my friends, some of my friends in high school, they didn't understand. And they said, you don't have to do this. And it was really hard for me to realize that they had faith and they believed in God. They saw a way out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she was born. I did not know that it was a girl, but when she was born on January 20th of 1981. It was the inauguration of President Reagan and the day the hostages were released. And I remember very clearly when they wheeled me into the delivery room. They took my arms and my legs and they were strapping them down in leather straps that were about that thick. And I said, "You don't need to hold me down." And I started to cry. And the doctor said to me, "That'll be enough. I don't want to hear another sound." And that's how we're shushed. Anyway, when she was born, they took her out of the room before she cried. So my little 18-year-old self thought, oh, the baby didn't make it. So I asked them, and I was told that I needed to be quiet. I did not find out that she made it until several hours later when my stepmom and dad came to see me. Anyway, I remember watching the TV in my room and I was all alone. And I thought, there's hostages that are being released and there's a president that is going to take over. And the whole world is celebrating. And I felt like I had literally just been encased in chains. So when my dad came, I asked if the baby had made it. And he said yes. And my stepmom said, "We think it's a little girl, but they won't let us walk by the nursery." Then, a couple hours later, I asked one of the nurses if I could please see the baby. I said, "I just want to hold the baby." And she said, "You can't ever hold your baby. Don't ask again." Anyway, that was very painful experience. And the next day when they discharged me from the hospital, my family could come in a different way. But when they took me out, I went by the nursery and they had hung sheets in the windows. So I knew then that the price I was going to pay was going to be pretty heavy to get back home. So anyway, we went home, and on Friday, we went to the courthouse, and it had been arranged through Dr. Baldwin and the attorney that, of course, it would be a professing family that took her. And I did not know it, but they were sitting in the other room waiting for me to sign the papers, and then they could have the baby. And I will tell you that the woman, the family who adopted her, she is amazing. Ruth, I love Ruth. I couldn't have picked a better person. I did not meet her or know about her for 25 years, but that is one of the things that was beautiful about the whole thing. So when we got to the courthouse, my stepmom took me to the courthouse, and I did not want to get out of the car. She said, "Sometimes it feels really heavy to pay the price." And I was 18 years old. Anyway, we went into the courthouse and it was very much like a Perry Mason movie. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that. And old oak courthouse. We sat in the benches, and when it came time for it to be my turn, they had me come through this old creaky gate, and I walked up and I sat down, and the judge started reading off that I was giving up all my rights and I wasn't to know anything. And at that point, that's when he said, "Baby girl Evanson." And I knew it was a girl. And they brought over the papers for me to sign, and I started crying. He banged his gavel on the stand and he said, "That'll be enough. It's a little late for tears." So it's just more of the silence. So I picked up the pen and I signed the papers. It felt like it was a choice that was taken out of my hands, but I do know it was a choice of mine, and I take responsibility for that. I didn't have the courage to say no, and I didn't have the courage to say what I wanted out loud. And I just needed to go home. So, anyway, that was the Dr. Baldwin story. We came home, and on Saturday night, I was feeling very sick, and I felt like I was having a heart attack. And so I said to my stepmom, "I think there's something wrong." And she said, "It's just the stress." And that Saturday, my brother and my sister, we were there, and my dad's and my brother said, "There's a meeting tomorrow morning." Yeah, there's a meeting tomorrow morning. So I got up and I got dressed. I don't know how much anybody wants to hear about this, but I put on the only dress I had. It was 5 sizes too small. I put on my winter coat and we went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we sat through meeting. And I thought, this is what I did this for. After meeting was over, I didn't feel good at all. And I thought, oh, I'm so hot. I'm so hot. I'm just like, felt like I was just drenched in sweat. So I got up as soon as meeting was over and I went upstairs to the bathroom and I was soaked. I had no idea. But my milk had come in. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, even my body knows the natural part that I'm supposed to have my baby. So I stuffed toilet paper in my blouse and I put my coat on and I buttoned it all the way up to the top and went downstairs. And my brother said, "They've invited us for lunch." So we had roast. Anyway, that's why my heart hurt. I just, I just wanted to let people know that any young professing girl who made that choice, it was not easy. It was a very, very painful choice. And it was a choice that none of us wanted to make. So I healed, and at 6 weeks, I got to go home. So the journey back home felt very long. When I got home that night, the workers were there at my mom's, and it was Blanche Hartsock and Rhonda Steidoff. And I will say, one of the most beautiful things that is part of my life right now is Crystal Stiles. Rhonda said to me that night, "Something has happened to you. Do you want to talk?" And I will tell you, I had shed very few tears because I was afraid to cry. And we went into the bedroom. And she said, "You can tell me." And the dam broke. And I cried. And I told her. And she said, "My sister has been through the same thing. You're not alone." And all these years later, 40 years later, that little girl her sister had is absolutely a light. So some things I think that God reaches down and he helps us, and he knew I needed that. That was really what I needed. So I was very afraid then at that point that maybe someone professing hadn't gotten the baby and I would never see her again. And it was just, I think, my thoughts going through my head of I just wanted my baby back is what I wanted. So I decided I was going to write Dr. Baldwin a letter, and I did. And I asked him if he could tell me if she went to professing family. And he wrote back. Dr. Baldwin was very kind. I can't say anything bad about Dr. Baldwin, but he did write back and he told me that there was nothing that he could tell me and that he didn't want me going to other conventions. And he was sorry that I had found out it was a girl because I would always be looking at all the little girls in other conventions wondering if they were mine. So I will tell you that the next 2 years, I tried really, really hard to be everything that I could possibly be, the best professing person, so that he would trust me enough to give me any information. And that's what meeting does to you. You feel like you're never going to be worthy enough to have honest answers, no matter what it is, no matter what your question is. Anyway, when I got back, one of the things that the professing ladies did was they had a tea. And I will tell you that one of the reasons I was sent away was so no one would know, because my poor sweet mom, she was plagued with worry about what other people would think, which she nicely handed down to me. And I have worried all my life about what other people think. And so I was sent away so that no one would know. And when I came back, I found out that actually everybody knew. And I went to this tea, and the tea was a nice little conversation until one of the elders' wives said, "Do you know there are some people who give away their babies?" Yeah. So that's when I knew, you aren't going to hide anything from anyone. So you can't live your life by what other people think. There's nothing hidden. Anyway, I started dating my now husband, and we dated for 2 or 3 months, and then I told him that I had had a baby. I will tell you that I do not hold anything against my mom. Somebody asked me recently if I had forgiven my mom. But she was just as much a victim of this as I was. And so I had nothing to forgive her for. So when I talked to my husband at that time and told him I'd had a baby, I don't hold it against him that he thought I wasn't free to marry him. That is just a teaching of the system. So I had to get the workers' permission, and they had to decide whether or not I was free to be married. It was recommended that I get baptized to seal the fact that I was back to meeting and I was going to do what I was supposed to do this time. So I was baptized that summer. And I don't want to offend anybody, but that baptism felt like death to me. And I know that the workers like to promote it as dying to self and that it's a good thing. But I will tell you that baptism felt like I died to myself. There was nothing of me left. Everyone else was crying because that's what they all do. They all cry at baptisms and professing. But I'll tell you, I was crying too. And it was because I felt like I was leaving absolutely everything of me behind. And I did not feel like it was of God. Anyway, I did the professing thing. We got married and had 6 really amazing kids. So trying to prove being worthy. You go to meeting and your children are always dressed and proper. I found it very, very hard to take part in meeting. I did occasionally. And we went to Bob and Eileen Chris Sunday morning meeting, and that was like the biggest blessing ever because they were amazing elders. Little Eileen, she'd wear a corsage for the Broncos game every time it was the Broncos playing. That's what kind of elders they were. They loved people. She was pretty amazing. They were exactly what we needed for that time. Anyway, we did the professing thing all those years. When my oldest son was 16, he had bone cancer. And that was a real struggle for 2 years. He went through some surgeries. Meeting was hard for him. And on his 3rd surgery, one of the friends called me up and she said, "Do you ever wonder if he's struggling with cancer because of the things you've done?"
I'm so sorry.
So all the years that I spent trying to be worthy literally just felt like a penance. To feel like choices that I had made and the price that I had paid, that my kids were going to pay for that too. It was really, really hard. So at that point, I not only felt like I couldn't take part anymore, but I felt like I couldn't take the emblems. We were sent to another home for a meeting. And when I wasn't taking part, the elder decided that I probably didn't need the emblems either. So for 4 years, he would get up and come across the room and take it from the person next to my daughter, and he would pass over the 2 of us and he'd hand it to my husband. And that went on for 4 years. And I couldn't do it anymore. One Sunday we got up and I walked out the door and I knew I was done. I have not been back to meeting since then. I think 2010 was maybe one of the last meetings I was in that meeting. I don't remember the years very well, but since that time, I fully understand what shunning is, to the point that a couple of different times we would walk into a restaurant or a place to eat And if the friends saw me, they would get up and move. One time we were in Walmart, my daughter and I, and one of the friends here in town walked behind us and spit on the floor. So it's been hard. And what's really hard is having those really deep roots inside that even when you feel like you're able to turn a new leaf and you're able to eradicate some of it, those roots just stick. And it's just really, really hard to pull yourself out of that. Another thing that I forgot to mention was back during that time of the Clades and Bill Griggs and all of that was the Ira Hobbs situation that arose. And it was the Gardners and the Jennings that were excommunicated from meetings. And they were right here in town, and they were some of our really dear friends. And we were told that we were not to have any association with them ever again. And I will tell you, that went against everything inside of me, because all I had ever done was felt like it was my responsibility to love people. And then you're asked to cut somebody off. It's just been a lot. Yeah.
I'm really proud of you. I'm really sorry.
I can tell you that the years that I have spent out, I've had some amazing people in my life, and a really good friend, and my kids and everything that have loved me through all of this. But it's really, really hard to feel like the people who were supposed to love you the most don't have love in their hearts. Yeah. This meeting thing, I've always said, of course, you know, I like my music. And I've always said it's like that song, Hotel California. You can check out, but you can't ever leave. And it just feels like no matter how hard you try, there's always something that will bring back a thought or a memory or a feeling. And it just takes you right back. And it fills you full of doubts and unworthiness. And that is the insidious part of it. Yeah. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Very hard. I don't even feel qualified to say anything or answer. But the thing that I see is that children were made responsible for adults' feelings and behavior, and then the adults did not act like adults with any support or care or love or justice or knowledge of pain. And it was all put on the youngest and the vulnerable. And it's wrong. It's wrong. And I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry.
Thank you. It's been a long journey. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know you don't owe us to tell us this story, but I do love what you've said multiple times, that you want people to know the cost. And I love your heart and caring that other people know. I'm sorry you had to tell it. Thank you for telling it.
I will say that I did try to find my daughter. And just to kind of give an ending to the story a little bit, I was told Dr. Baldwin had passed, but that there were some workers who had the list of the babies that were given up for adoption. And I was, oh, okay. So I got hold of one of the workers that I knew here, and he said, yes, I know who has that list. It's Darren Bryan. And I said, oh, well, how do I do this? And he said, well, I'll be the middleman and I'll go between. And I said, that'll be fine. So long story short, it was a very, very painful process, but Darren did find her and said I could write a letter to her. And she did receive the letter, but she does not want to meet me. And that's okay. I respect that. But it just, the worker's involvement never stops, because he did call her and he told her, I am a Baldwin baby myself. And he said, meeting your birth parent is about as meaningful as meeting a stranger in Walmart. So that took care of that. And, it's okay. I respect her very much and her choice. It's okay. But their involvement just never ends. It just never
It
ends. They
it
just have to
doesn't.
have control. And anyway, I just thought I'd
Oh my
finish up
goodness.
with that.
Yeah.
That's how that ended. That was a very painful process too, but it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all okay.
Yeah.
You know what, Whitney? Through it all and everything that has happened, I will have to say that the most amazing lesson that I have learned is to let go of things that I have no control over and to literally love people where they are. Just everybody has a story, everybody has pain, and everybody needs to be loved. And I have
Mhm.
6 amazing children that none of them go to meeting, and they have tattoos and they have piercings, and they are absolutely fabulous. And I absolutely love them with my whole heart, just exactly the way they are. And if I hadn't have gone through everything I went through, I would still be that judgmental person that put chains on people. So God brings us
Mhm.
through a lot of stuff. And then he says, here's the rainbow.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and I will
Mhm.
tell you, I am so thankful, so, so thankful for people on CCF. Some of you have really been a balm to my heart. And I am so thankful for my agnostic atheist X 2x2s that teach me it's okay to love just the way they are. They are
Mhm.
amazing, just amazing.
Yeah.
Humanity is
And
amazing.
absolutely. And you're amazing too. And I love you just the way you are. I really do. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you
Yeah.
for your courage. Take care.